After my rebirth, I secretly gave away Song Jiqing's job, all because, in my past life, Song Jiqing made me give my job to his widowed sister-in-law. He took his widowed sister-in-law and niece to the city for work and school. Left without a job, I had to stay in the countryside to raise my daughter. With no man in the house, my daughter was targeted by local thugs and forced to drop out of school. I went to the city to seek help from Song Jiqing, but he said he was too busy. He then turned around and celebrated with his widowed sister-in-law, whose daughter had just been admitted to a top university. Meanwhile, I had just received the news that my daughter had jumped into the river, and I died on the spot from the shock. My elder brother has passed away, leaving my sister-in-law and niece with no one to rely on. I have to support them, just like in my past life. Song Jiqing was trying to persuade me to give up my job for his widowed sister-in-law. At that time, we had just passed the exams to become permanent employees at the steel mill. I said, I'm willing to sign, but the scar on my arm is itching again. Could you go get the ointment for me? I got this scar from nodding off over my books late one night. The oil lamp burned me. To get into the steel mill, I worked just as hard as Song Jiqing did. All Song Jiqing had to do was focus on his studies. A flicker of guilt passed through Song Jiqing's eyes as he stood up. I quickly filled in Song Jiqing's name in the applicant section and folded the application form. Song Jiqing, since you're so concerned about your widowed sister-in-law's helpless situation, I'll let you have your noble gesture. Seeing that I had signed, Song Jiqing instantly breathed a sigh of relief and promptly added his own signature. The transfer of employment requires the signatures of both spouses. I quickly gathered the application form, placed it in an envelope, and sealed it with wax. Song Jiqing didn't suspect a thing. After all, he used to be my whole world, and I obeyed him in almost everything. He looked out the window and said, Shu-Qing, while there's still time, take the application into town. That way, it won't delay my sister-in-law and me from reporting for work in the city early. Meeting his expectant gaze, I answered, okay. Since Song Jiqing was so impatient, I decided to go along with his wishes. Once in the city, I handed the application form to the factory director. Seeing the official stamp on the application, I finally felt a sense of relief. This time around, it's finally Song Jiqing's turn to lose his job and his chance to move to the city. In the previous life, after Song Jiqing got a job in the city, he promised to bring me and our daughter to live with him. Later, he claimed the factory wasn't doing well and his pay was low. So he told me to grow more crops at home and sell them to make ends meet. Security in the village was poor, and our daughter was constantly harassed by local thugs, leaving her no time to focus on her studies. I wanted Song Jiqing to transfer our daughter to a school in the city, but he said Lin Feng's daughter had exams coming up. He needed to tutor her and had no time to look after our daughter, so he asked us to wait a little longer. We waited and waited, but in the end, our daughter succumbed to depression and took her own life, while I became ill from constant overwork. This time around, my daughter and I will live a good life in the city. The moment I stepped through the door, I heard Lin Feng's voice. Jiqing, isn't this too much to ask of your sister-in-law? The steel mill job is easy, and she could stay in the city. Oh, it's all your eldest brother's fault for leaving so soon. Otherwise, we wouldn't be burdening you two like this. Song Jiqing's eyes were full of pity. Don't worry, sister-in-law, Shu-Qing is used to hard labor in the countryside. She's not like you. You and your daughter never knew hardship while my brother was here, and I promise you'll be well taken care of even now that he's gone. My heart gave a sudden, painful lurch. Since Song Jiqing was frail, I took on most of the farm work and household chores. Even our young daughter learned to cook and sweep at a tender age. While Song Jiqing only had to teach at the village school each day, we made allowances for Song Jiqing, but in his telling, it became the reason why we were tough enough to endure life in the countryside. It's both ludicrous and absurd, yet, in my past life, I bought into his words, needlessly sacrificing both my own life and my daughter's. I don't know what Song Jiqing said next, but Lin Feng covered her mouth with a laugh. When she looked up, her eyes met mine standing in the doorway. Lin Feng always carried an air of superiority around me. She was stylish and elegant. While I looked like a complete mess, Lin Feng waved me over. Sis, she said, I'll treasure this job. Please don't be upset with Jiqing over this. Song Jiqing immediately looked at me with a nervous expression. Ever since his eldest brother passed away from illness, depleting the family's resources and forcing Lin Feng and her daughter to move back to the countryside from the city, he had been giving me constant reminders and instructions. He said that his sister-in-law was a city woman, not as sharp-tongued as the village women, and told me to mind my manners when speaking to her. I smiled and said, it's no trouble at all. It's the least we can do. With your brother gone, we can't let you feel unwelcome. Oh, that's rich. It wasn't me who gave up the job. Anyone can talk a good game, Perhaps because I didn't show the anger and misery she had expected. Lin Feng's smile froze on her face. Song Jiqing then looked at me with approval. Shu Qing, it seems you've learned a thing or two about graciousness from your sister-in-law these days. You really should follow her example. Song Jiqing was handsome and refined, and he spoke with cultured politeness. There was a time when a compliment from him would make me blush with shyness, but now it just sounds grating and repulsive. A child's sudden wailing and crying came from inside the room. We rushed over and found our 7-year-old daughter crying, holding a dented pencil case. Lin Feng's daughter, Qian, stood to the side, her face a picture of defiance. Although Qian is the same age as my daughter, she's a head taller. I quickly asked my daughter what had happened. My daughter pointed at Qian and said, she wanted my pencil case. When I wouldn't give it to her, she stomped on it. As she spoke, my daughter grew more upset and cried, Mom, this is my only pencil case. Qian stood with her hands on her hips. My mom said you're staying in the village for school anyway, so you don't need such a fancy pencil case. Lin Feng looked somewhat embarrassed and quickly tried to smooth things over. Kids don't know any better. I'll have a word with her later. Song Jiqing frowned, looking at his daughter. His voice stern. Xiao Ru, didn't I teach you to be considerate of your cousin? She's a guest. What you did was wrong. His daughter hung her head, at a loss for what to do. I immediately went to my daughter's side and opened my backpack. Sweetie, that old pencil case is too worn out. We don't need it. Mommy bought you a new backpack and a new stationery set. Seeing what I was holding up, my daughter's tears finally turned into a smile. Song Jiqing frowned and scolded me. You shouldn't be so extravagant. Qian wasn't wrong. You really don't need such nice things for school in the countryside. Besides, you should have bought 2 sets and brought one for Qian too. He then turned to our daughter, Xiao Ru. Do you remember what Dad told you before? We need to be considerate of your sister. She's our guest. Hurry up and give the new backpack and stationery to your sister, then apologize to her. You'll still be a good girl. My daughter's little face fell instantly, the light in her eyes snuffed out. Qian, looking immensely pleased with herself, was already holding out her hand to me with a grin. Lin Feng said it wasn't right even as she told Qian to thank her uncle. The profound disappointment and helplessness on my daughter's face made my heart clench painfully. Ever since Lin Feng and her daughter returned to the countryside, Song Jiqing has been showing them favor at every turn. Meat and ration coupons were always reserved for them first, while my daughter and I had to make do with wild vegetables and sweet potatoes. On the rare occasion there was meat, it was only the greasy fat that Lin Feng found unappetizing, which I would take home to render for cooking. Song Jiqing always had an excuse ready. He said, they're city folk, mother and daughter, they're not used to our simple country fare. We country bumpkins can make do with anything. All this time, I've been swallowing my anger and humiliation. With me as her terrible example, my daughter grew timid and weak, afraid to stand up for herself. This taught her to bottle everything up inside, a habit that ultimately led her down a tragic path. Remembering my daughter's miserable fate in her past life, a surge of rage boiled up in me. I grabbed a bowl from the table and hurled it with all my might at Song Jiqing's face and body. Get out of the way, for your father's sake, move. If you care so much about your sister-in-law and niece, why don't you just give your own life to your elder brother? Song Jiqing was caught completely off guard and forgot to dodge. After all, I had always spoken softly and gently, let alone resorting to physical violence. The bowl shattered, but my fury was still not spent. I directly overturned the table. All that commotion drew the neighbors over to see what was going on. I pinched my own thigh, and the tears started flowing instantly. Aunties, I don't want to live anymore. My husband doesn't care about our family. Song Jiqing had a swollen temple, which made him look like the victim in this situation, but I was even more pitiful than him. Through my tears, I recounted how Song Jiqing kept taking all the good things from our home to give to my sister-in-law. He even took the family's meager savings of just over 1,000 yuan and gave it to Lin Feng and her daughter. He said, sister-in-law is from the city. She'd be too proud to ask for help. We should take the initiative to support them, and so, he proactively handed all the money over to her. The very next day, Lin Feng and her daughter were dressed in brand new clothes. Meanwhile, my daughter and I were still wearing our faded cotton blouses. Qian made a point of twirling in her new dress in front of my daughter, declaring herself a little princess and saying my daughter could only be the princess's maid. This left my daughter feeling down for days. At the mention of money, Song Jiqing lowered his head guiltily. The neighbors shook their heads. It's only natural to help out your brother now that he's gone, but not like this. If my husband took the money, I'd raise hell. Exactly. In other families, it's the men who do the heavy lifting, but in yours, it's the women who run themselves ragged. She spares you the hardship. And this is how you repay your wife, Song Jiqing. The village schoolteacher, who usually carried himself with an air of aloof superiority, flushed a deep crimson under the weight of their pointed stares. Lin Feng also tried to offer a sheepish explanation, but no one was listening. Anyone with eyes could see the difference. The mother and daughter were plump and rosy-cheeked, while my daughter and I were pale and gaunt. It was obvious we weren't eating from the same pot. After the neighbors had dispersed, Song Jiqing held his swollen, reddened face and looked at me with a pitiful expression. Shuqing, it hurts so much. In the past, when he cut his hand harvesting wheat, I'd be heartbroken for ages and wouldn't let him set foot in the fields again. Even our little daughter, acting like a grown-up, would blow on it to help him. Now, seeing the coldness in my eyes, he couldn't help but shudder. Guilt flashed in his eyes. Shuqing, I know you and our daughter have been wronged lately, but my sister-in-law has lost her support. My niece has lost her father. They've never known hardship. Can't you find it in your heart to be more understanding? Be understanding. So just because I can endure hardship, I'm supposed to endure it forever. Lin Feng and her niece used to live a life of comfort and privilege. They've fallen on hard times now, and while their situation is pitiable, I'm not the one to blame for it. I can still vividly recall the scene I witnessed just before my death, despite my physical discomfort. I went into the city to find Song Jiqing and told him our daughter was being bullied and wanted to drop out of school. Song Jiqing wore an expression of impatience. A fly doesn't land on a crack-free egg. If she can't control herself, who's to blame? Go home now. I have important matters to attend to. The next moment, through the restaurant's glass window, I saw Song Jiqing and Lin Feng, with Qian in tow, making the rounds to toast at each table. Everyone offered their congratulations. Director Song, a great father indeed raises a worthy daughter. Your child got into a top-tier university. Her future is bright and promising. Song Jiqing and Lin Feng exchanged a glance, their eyes brimming with unmistakable pride. Just then, a villager found me and said, Auntie Lu, hurry home. Your daughter jumped into the river. They pulled her out, but she's not breathing. In an instant, my vision went dark and all the sounds around me vanished. Ahead lay a scene of clinking glasses and the mingled scents of perfume and fine silks, and I was swallowed by the immense darkness behind me. I took a deep breath, finally pulling myself out of the painful memories of a past life. I held my daughter close, then said sternly to Qian, You broke your sister's thing. You need to apologize. Qian held her head high. I won't apologize. I didn't do anything wrong. Xiaoru suddenly reached out, snatched Qian's hair bow, and quickly stomped on it under her foot. She spread her little hands and said, Mom, we're even now. I don't need her apology anymore. This was the first time Xiaoru had learned to fight back, and I felt a sense of relief. If reason doesn't work, other methods can be used. Qian flew into a rage. Stamping her feet in frustration, Lin Feng held Qian close, her expression a mix of stubborn defiance and deep sorrow. Qian and I should have gone with her father back then. We shouldn't have become a burden to you, causing you two to argue over us. Qian also cried and wailed for her father, saying she was a fatherless child who got picked on. The mother and daughter looked as if they had suffered a grave injustice, one hanging her head and wiping away tears, the other wailing uncontrollably. Song Jiqing's eyes instantly welled up. He turned and glared at me with fury. Lu Shuqing, when will you ever stop? Qian is just a child, and you had to make such a scene. I'm about to leave for the city, and you're still acting like some country shrew. How are we supposed to get along from now on? I looked at him coldly. Then let's get a divorce. Song Jiqing's breath hitched, staring at me in disbelief. After all, I used to care for him so much. Whenever we had a conflict, I was always the one to smooth things over. He let out a cold laugh. Fine, don't you dare regret this. The daughter watched Song Jiqing's retreating figure as he carried Qian away, her expression forlorn. She didn't yet understand what divorce meant. She only knew her father had abandoned her time and again, leaving her feeling wronged each time. I kissed her and said, if someone makes you angry and sad, then we simply don't need them anymore. My daughter seemed to understand, yet not quite. She may have to weather some storms, but I will be her shelter through it all. The main hall door remained quiet all night. It wasn't until morning that Song Jiqing returned from next door. He kept his head down, his manner somewhat awkward. Qian was frightened and kept calling for her dad, so I stayed with her all night. My daughter and I were sitting at the table, eating breakfast. In the past, all the eggs were saved for Song Jiqing. I used to think he was the pillar of the household, believing that if he was well, our whole family would be well. Now, my daughter and I each get an egg. It tastes so good. I stuffed the egg into my mouth without saying a word. My indifference seemed to have angered Song Jiqing. His face darkened with irritation. Don't you go spreading wild rumors and nonsense like those country bumpkins, he snapped, ever since Lin Feng and her daughter arrived. Song Jiqing couldn't stop talking about country bumpkins, but luckily for him, he'll never make it to the city. He's doomed to be the very country bumpkin he looks down on for the rest of his life. I reminded him, don't forget to file the divorce papers. Song Jiqing's expression changed, and he let out a sigh. Shuqing, I know I've been neglecting you and our daughter this month, and I'm sorry. I know you're just saying you want a divorce out of anger. My sister-in-law and her child are all alone in the world. I can't just abandon them. You're my wife. You should understand and support me. I cut him off. Aren't you all moving to the city? If we get divorced, you can remarry Lin Feng. That way, you can add Qianqian to your household registration, and she'll be eligible to attend the steel mills affiliated school. Song Jiqing looked hesitant. That doesn't seem right. Lin Feng, who had been hiding outside the door, rushed in. Her eyes pleading, Jiqing, for Qianqian's sake, just let your wife put up with this for a little while. Once Qianqian is enrolled, the two of you can get remarried. Following Lin Feng's meaningful glance, Qianqian also clung to Song Jiqing's leg. Uncle, I want to go to the best primary school in the city. I promised my dad I would study hard. It was his dying wish. The hesitation on Song Jiqing's face vanished instantly. As if steeling himself, he looked at me with guilt once more. Shuqing, once everything is settled, we can remarry. I sneered inwardly. If Song Jiqing had bothered to ask around, he would have known the steel mills affiliated school didn't require such complicated procedures. But when it came to matters concerning Lin Feng and her daughter, he was always far too hasty. With Lin Feng's urging, Song Jiqing and I smoothly obtained our divorce papers, with our daughter placed in my custody, perhaps thinking it was a divorce of convenience. Song Jiqing raised no objections. I packed clothes for myself and my daughter, preparing to report to the steel plant ahead of schedule. Song Jiqing looked at my assortment of luggage, utterly perplexed. It's just a temporary divorce for show. Why have you packed all your things? I blinked. I'm taking Xiaoru to stay with my parents for a few extra days. Song Jiqing let out a sigh of relief. You've been a bit on edge lately. Getting out of town for a bit will do you good. Lin Feng, however, looked quite pleased. Jiqing, we really should start packing. We'll be heading into the city in a few days, and I just can't seem to get used to anything out here in the countryside, Lin Feng said, shooting me a smug glance. I looked back at her with a faint, ambiguous smile, which seemed to irritate her. She leaned in closer, her expression a mix of pity and a touch of self-satisfaction. We were never meant to walk the same path. My daughter will be a city girl, while you and your mother are destined to remain country folk. I pretended to be hard of hearing and raised my voice. Sister-in-law, you say we country people are dirty and foul, but the rice and steamed buns you eat are all grown by us. How can you stomach it? Lin Feng's face flushed crimson with shame, and she turned to retreat into the house. Song Jiqing looked dazed for a moment, then stared at me and said, Shuqing, you've changed so much lately. I hardly recognize you anymore. As he spoke and reached for my hand, I instinctively pulled back. A flicker of hurt passed through his eyes. I'll drive you back to your parents' place later. It's about to rain, and you shouldn't ride your bike in this. I was startled. I hadn't actually planned on going back to my parents' house. My parents are very traditional. If they found out about the divorce, there would be a huge scene. I was just trying to think of an excuse to decline when Qianqian came clattering into the room. Uncle, I want to go to town to buy apples. We finished all the ones you bought us the day before yesterday. Mom says an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Qianqian tugged on Song Jiqing's arm, whining playfully. Song Jiqing turned his head away, looking a bit uncomfortable. Last month, I had asked him to buy some discounted fruit. Our daughter had been a bit constipated lately, and I'd heard eating fruit could help. He just said country folk should drink more water and stop being so fussy. Song Jiqing glanced at me, as if wanting to explain. Shuqing, Qianqian is used to eating this. Don't worry, when I go to the city, I waved my hand, cutting him off. Go buy it. I understand, we're divorced. What he does is none of my business. Qianqian sang a song as she settled onto the back of Song Jiqing's bicycle, making a funny face at her daughter. This princess is going to eat a lot of fruit, and the maid gets none. Song Jiqing looked at his daughter with an apologetic expression, as if he wanted to say something. The daughter turned her head away and declared loudly, I don't want to be a princess anyway, I want to be a queen. Besides, my mom will buy me lots of fruit. I don't need anyone else's. Song Jiqing's expression shifted for a moment. The daughter who used to call him daddy all the time had now become a stranger. A flicker of hurt crossed his face. He murmured, she's still young, she'll understand when she's older. He looked at me as if seeking my agreement. I turned and went back inside. Ignoring him, I took my daughter to the city she had been dreaming of. Reporting for work early made the factory director very pleased. With a group of staff away for training, they were quite short-handed. By comparison with me, his impression of Lin Feng suffered a little. Both Song Jiqing and I were originally hired for accounting positions. With my keen eye for numbers and attention to detail, I managed to sort out a batch of messy accounts within just a few days on the job. The factory manager couldn't stop singing my praises and even advanced me a month's salary. I also managed to secure a single-occupancy dormitory room and bought my daughter several pretty outfits. She used to watch enviously as Chan wore a different set of clothes every day, but now she can do the same. She will have all that and more in the future. I will make sure she grows up happy and never has to walk the same path as her past life. A few days later, I ran into Song Jiqing near the steel mill. He and Lin Feng were walking with Chan between them, chatting and laughing. Looking just like a family of three, when he saw me, Song Jiqing quickly let go of her hand and forced a smile. We're here to report to the steel mill today, and we thought we'd pick up a few things while we're in town. Lin Feng gave me a once-over, a flash of resentment in her eyes. I was wearing a Dacron shirt with black bell bottoms, an outfit no less stylish than Lin Feng's Cheongsam dress, putting on a show of concern. She said, "Did you come to the city just to buy clothes? Sister-in-law, you'll have to be more frugal living out in the countryside. Relying solely on Jiqing's city job must be quite a strain." It was only then that Song Jiqing noticed what I was wearing. He shook his head and said, "Shuqing, I know life in the countryside will be a bit harder for you and the child, so it's only natural you'd want to buy some nice clothes. Let's not dwell on who was right or wrong about what happened recently. The point is, you need to come back to the countryside soon. It's not right for the house to be empty." What a joke. Song Jiqing thinks I need his permission just to dress a little nicer. I said nothing. Song Jiqing, however, mistook my silence for agreement and visibly relaxed. "Once I get my job situation sorted, I'll come back to visit. Make sure the house is clean so Chan can come to the countryside to play during summer vacation. Oh, and my wife likes tomatoes and cucumbers, so plant more this year. I'll swing by to pick some up when I have time." Song Jiqing was about to say more, but Lin Feng held him back. "It's almost 8, we need to report to the factory." As she spoke, Lin Feng then put on a show of being conflicted as she looked at me. "Sister-in-law, both Jiqing and I have jobs. We don't have loads of free time like you do, so we can't stay and chat." Song Jiqing also urged me, "You should head home. This isn't the right place for you." I just smiled, walked ahead of them, and stepped right through the steel mill's main gate. The security guard greeted me politely. "Good morning, Accountant Liu." Song Jiqing quickly straightened his appearance, lowered his head, and echoed, "Good morning, Accountant Liu." After a long moment with no response, Song Jiqing looked around in confusion. Then he saw my face, wearing a faint, enigmatic smile. I raised my hand in a casual wave. "Morning, everyone." Lin Feng was the first to snap out of it, pointing at me in disbelief. You're Accountant Liu." Song Jiqing was equally stunned. "How can that be? No, there's no way you could be Accountant Liu." I waved them off, pulling out my employee ID. "No time for chit-chat, I've got to get to work." The room fell silent for a moment. Song Jiqing's expression shifted through a series of changes before he grabbed my arm and asked urgently, "Shuqing, you must be here to check out the factory for your sister-in-law in advance, right?" What an idiot. He's insane. I kicked him aside. The elderly security guard stopped Song Jiqing warily. "Who are you? What's your business here?" We're here to report for work. Please state your names." "Wait, that's not right. Your name isn't on the list of new hires." I hurried over to my workstation. What happened next was told to me by a colleague. After making a scene at the factory gate, Song Jiqing and Lin Feng had no choice but to accept the fact that only Lin Feng would be getting the job. Getting into the factory also required passing a routine assessment. In her past life, with Song Jiqing's help, Lin Feng had barely managed to scrape through. This time around, she would have to handle some minor accounts on her own. Despite having some prior knowledge, she had neglected it for so long that she got every single answer wrong. The factory manager shook his head, rejected the application, and sent all her documents back. I knew Song Jiqing wouldn't let it go. Sure enough, the moment I stepped out of the steel mill after work, someone grabbed me. Song Jiqing was a far cry from his confident self that morning. His face was drawn, and his voice was thick with frustration. "Shuqing, did you really submit a job transfer application for my position?" I put on an innocent face. "You were the one who said you felt sorry for your sister-in-law and that we should give in to them. Are you having second thoughts now?" Song Jiqing ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean? That I should just hand over the job I worked so hard to get? If you think your sister-in-law has it tough, you make it up to her. What does that have to do with me? But I only wanted you to stay in the countryside and live a life of ease." If it's such a good life, why don't you enjoy it yourselves? Don't you like it? Song Jiqing's head dropped in defeat. It seemed he understood the situation was settled, and there was no turning back. He paused thoughtfully, as if an idea had struck him. Shu Qing, if you don't want to transfer the job, that's fine, but Qian is our eldest brother's only child, we can't hold her back. Her mother is so worried she can't even eat. You put Qian under your household registration so she can attend the Steel Mills Elementary School. I'll take Xiaoru back to the countryside with me. I'm her biological father. I would never treat her poorly. My eyes widened in disbelief as I stared at Song Jiqing. Where did he get the nerve? With just a few words, he wanted to ruin my daughter's future. I was trembling with rage. Just then, Xiaoru emerged from around the corner. She would wait for me in the dorm while I was at work. And sometimes she'd even run out to meet me. Song Jiqing spotted Xiaoru, and his eyes instantly lit up. Sweetheart, you're willing to come back to the countryside with me, right? Sister Qian has lost her father and is so pitiful. Would it be okay for her to stay in the city with your mom? Xiaoru tilted her head. I don't have a father either. I'm a pitiful child too, who's ever shown me any sympathy. I gave Xiaoru a discreet thumbs up. Song Jiqing was taken aback. Then glared at me in a furious huff. What kind of nonsense are you teaching the child? I'm still alive and well. She's not wrong, you know. Some people are alive, but they're already dead inside. I gave a cold laugh. We're already divorced. You're always saying Qian doesn't have a father, so why don't you hurry up and be that for her? Aren't we doing you a favor? Song Jiqing's face paled. I had no other choice. Shu Qing, you know that. I thought you'd understand. Oh. Then why don't you tell the people at the Civil Affairs Bureau exactly why you got divorced? Would you have the nerve? Colleagues were trickling out of the building. By now, everyone knew about the scene Song Jiqing had caused at the steel plant that morning. I was worried this situation would only get worse the more I tried to explain, so I told my colleagues about the conflict between us early on. Well, if it isn't the brother-in-law who's got a thing for his sister-in-law. There's no such thing as favoritism without a reason. Any man who lets his own wife and children suffer is either a fool or a scoundrel. Song Jiqing couldn't bear the strange looks and fled in disgrace. Xiaoru threw herself into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I won't have a dad anymore, will I? My heart ached. Yet I was also comforted. She was showing the vulnerability appropriate for her age, no longer needing to pretend to be strong. That's right, but you still have your mom. And you have yourself. We're all going to be okay. I soothed her gently. My life settled back into its quiet routine, and Xiaoru got her wish to attend the Steel Mills Elementary School. Song Jiqing, meanwhile, took Lin Feng back to the village. Rumors spread through the village that his improper relationship with Lin Feng was what led to our divorce. With his reputation in tatters, the village school was no longer willing to take him. Song Jiqing started learning to work the fields. Having barely set foot on farmland before, he became the source of many laughs. Every crop he touched withered in the soil, and none of the fruits or melons he planted ever bloomed. After a long, exhausting day, he would try to come inside to rest, only to be stopped at the door by Lin Feng. Lin Feng covered her nose. You reek, go wash up first. Lin Feng didn't even bother to boil a pot of hot water for him. Song Jiqing had no choice but to bathe in the river, just like the other working men. Song Jiqing, with his fair and delicate skin, became the target of teasing by a few burly, suntanned men. He flushed crimson with anger, repeatedly muttering how vulgar. After taking cold showers for several days in a row, he came down with a fever again. In his delirium, he thought of me and murmured, Shu Qing, I feel awful. In the past, whenever he felt under the weather, I would stay by his side, making him congee and giving him medicine. Xiaoru would also place a damp towel on his forehead and softly comfort him. Daddy will get better, don't be scared. Now he lay alone in the pitch-black room, with no one left to answer him. He struggled to get out of bed. Just then, Lin Feng returned, her arms laden with bags. Jiqing, I meant to buy your medicine, but Qian wanted new clothes. Sigh, it's already hard enough on her, having to go to school in the village. With tear-filled eyes, Lin Feng looked at Song Jiqing as she spoke. After all, she was hoping Song Jiqing would put in a good word for her again. If Qian could really stay in the city, she might have a chance to stay too. Wasn't her life in the countryside better than mine? It was clear Song Jiqing cared more for her and her daughter, but instead of comforting her with promises as he used to, Song Jiqing walked out the door alone, visibly agitated. Seeing me holding Xiaoru's hand at the courtyard gate, his eyes lit up with joy. He instinctively smoothed his hair and walked towards us. Shu Qing, Xiaoru, what brings you back? Xiaoru and I took a step back. I said calmly, we're back to get a certificate from the village party secretary. Xiaoru is transferring her household registration to go with me. Song Jiqing seemed unsteady on his feet, staggering backward a step. He sniffled helplessly. Xiaoru, do you miss your dad? You've grown taller and become even more beautiful lately, Xiaoru replied politely. Her tone courteous yet distant. Thank you for the compliment. Song Jiqing's eyes were filled with desolation. Just then, Qianqian rushed out from the side, pointing at Xiaoru. She said with an air of superiority, give me that bow in her hair right now, or I'll have uncle punish you. Xiaoru didn't show a hint of fear. Why should I give you what's mine? You have to give me what's yours. That's what uncle said. He's your father. You dare disobey him. All the good things in your house always went to me first anyway. Xiaoru rolled her eyes. I don't argue with idiots. The scene felt all too familiar. Song Jiqing seemed to realize something. His face flushing with shame, he grabbed Qianqian and said, enough, get back to your room. Being scolded for the first time, Qianqian burst into tears, pounding her little fists against Song Jiqing. I want my daddy. I'm a poor child without a father. I'm so pitiful. Lin Feng, hearing the commotion, rushed out. She shot me a resentful glare before pulling out a handkerchief to dab at her tears. Qianqian's father left us far too soon, abandoning us, a widow and her orphan child. We really should have gone with him, Lin Feng wept, all the while casting furtive glances at Song Jiqing. If your elder brother were still here, we mother and daughter wouldn't be living like this. Song Jiqing covered his ears, his face a mask of utter irritation. Lin Feng was taken aback for a moment, forgetting to continue her crying. Lin Feng was furious. Song Jiqing, you promised we could go back to our old life. How can you go back on your word? Song Jiqing scoffed. My elder brother is dead. If you want that kind of life, go find him in the ground. I was taken aback. This was the first time Song Jiqing had treated the mother and daughter with such cold, hard indifference. The woman's wailing grew even more piercing. Qianqian picked up a fire poker from the ground and swung it at Song Jiqing. You yelled at my mom. You're a bad person, a real jerk. Song Jiqing just stood there, frozen, making no move to dodge. He simply stared at me and Xiaoru with a heavy, intense gaze. I just felt utterly irritated. I quickly took Xiaoru's hand and led her away from that whole messy situation. Walking along the familiar country path, I was reminded of how we used to be. Song Jiqing and I were part of a rare few who married for love. Song Jiqing was well educated, handsome, and came from a small family. After marriage, we were deeply devoted, always considerate of each other, and were blessed with a beloved daughter. I thought we would live out our days in quiet, steady companionship, supporting each other. But everything changed after his eldest brother passed away. I was reminded again of the tragedy that befell my daughter and me in our past life. Perhaps he didn't change. Perhaps this is who he always was. I saw Song Jiqing again on Xiaoru's birthday. After half a year apart, his cheeks were gaunt, his skin was deeply tanned, and he was unshaven. He looked utterly worn down and aged. He was carrying a small plastic bag. When he saw the beautifully decorated cake in our hands, he instinctively pulled his own hand back, looking somewhat awkward. Happy birthday, Xiaoru. I told my daughter to go upstairs and do her homework first. As a father, I can't deny him the right to see his daughter, but we need to agree on a specific time to avoid catching each other off guard, he pleaded. Shuqing, only now do I realize how terribly wrong I was. Can we ever go back to how things were? I can find another job in the city, or you could bring Xiaoru to visit when you have time. I promise I won't look after Lin Feng and her daughter anymore. They're not my responsibility. I shook my head, cutting off his rambling. Jiqing, search your heart and ask yourself this. Were you really accommodating them solely out of a sense of duty to your older brother? Lin Feng was the belle of the surrounding villages, gentle, considerate, and full of sweet attentions when times were good. It was only after Song Jiqing's elder brother's business began to prosper that he caught Lin Feng's eye. Song Jiqing's face instantly turned deathly pale. I said quietly, if you and Lin Feng both got the chance to move to the city, you would devote yourself to her and her family, living as one happy unit, while casting me and Xiaoru aside without a second thought. Song Jiqing shook his head desperately. No, it can't be. Scenes from a past life flashed before his eyes. I sighed. So you would want your daughter, if she ever had a husband like you, to still turn around and forgive him? I want to show her through my actions that she doesn't need to accommodate anyone, nor forgive anyone who hurts her. If someone can hurt you once, they can do it a second or a third time. She has the courage and the means to change an unsatisfactory life at any moment, to pull herself out of the mire. Song Jiqing was stunned for a moment before finally burying his face in his hands and weeping. I think he probably understood what I meant. In the end, Lin Feng couldn't adjust to life in the countryside. She remarried, taking Qianqian with her, to an older businessman. He even secretly sold off all the valuable items in the house. I heard they lived well for a few years, but after the businessman went bankrupt, the mother and daughter vanished without a trace. Song Jiqing went to work in the south, sending a few hundred yuan back home every month. I accepted every payment, as it was the child support he owed Xiaoru. It was his debt to her. He used to write letters home, just asking how we were. I never replied to a single one, so he stopped writing and just sends money now. Seeing that I had signed, Song Jiqing instantly let out a sigh of relief and then signed his own name. I won't go forward, but I will tell her I love her. No matter what happens, her mother will support her and help her. Sensitive children always need the most direct and tangible expressions of love. I'm working hard and studying diligently now, striving to be her strongest support. Also, I want to set a good example for her. To climb out of the mire, courage alone isn't enough, you need the capability to back it all up. I bear a great deal of responsibility for the tragedy that befell my daughter in our past life. Back then, I was busy with the farm work. Deep down, I suspected Song Jiqing probably didn't want to take care of us anymore. Yet, in front of my daughter, I kept praising him and making excuses for him. It was like brainwashing myself. I just couldn't accept the fact that I had been abandoned. Now I understand. When a mother is strong, her child can be fearless. 10 years later, my daughter was admitted to a top university as she had always hoped, and I was promoted to workshop supervisor. Amidst the clinking of glasses, the room was filled with a sea of guests. My husband and I, with our daughter in tow, made our rounds from table to table, toasting and receiving well wishes from the guests. In a daze, I caught sight of a solitary figure by the window, watching us with a look of utter desolation. I looked up, and there was the face of Song Jiqing, whom I hadn't seen in years. Compared to my graceful aging, he has weathered so much more. Past and present converged. The difference is, this time, we are the ones standing in the light. Story 2, my stepsister Shinruoming is dead. She died deep in the mountains near the border. After being assaulted by the debt collectors, she jumped from the car and fled. They never even found her body. When Jiwen found out, he built an empty grave for her, clutching her memorial photo. He wept and screamed, "Why couldn't it have been you, Shinran, who died? You killed my Ruoming." From that day on, I was subjected to Jiwen's endless domestic violence. I had lost my family, was saddled with debt, and could only swallow my humiliation. After Jiwen's company took my father's patented technology, his business soared. Everyone praised him as a man of loyalty and righteousness, while I alone endured his brutality, eventually dying in that house. When I woke again, I saw Jiwen arriving right behind the debt collectors. I had been reborn. Returned to the day the collectors came pounding on our door. 4 or 5 burly men were blocking the entrance, hammering against it. Then, a car horn sounded, and Jiwen's voice shouted from outside, "What do you think you're doing? This is trespassing." Jiwen was here. Shinruoming, who had been hiding in the bedroom too scared to come out, heard his voice and immediately ran to open the door. In my past life, our family was in debt. My father had vanished, and the 3 of us, my mother, my stepsister, and I, were being hounded for payment. When Jiwen arrived, he said the cash he could immediately access was only enough to save one of us sisters. The other would have to be taken by the collectors. Years ago, when the Ji family fell on hard times, my father, out of respect for their long friendship, arranged my engagement to Jiwen to help revive their business. Our engagement trended online for 3 days straight. Yet all the while, he was carrying on with my stepsister. Shinruoming, back then, still in the dark, I thought he had come specifically to rescue me. Sobbing, I threw myself into his arms, and he was forced to save me. I had no idea back then what a terrible price I would pay for that moment. He promised Shinruoming that once his funds were liquid, he would come for her without fail. At the time, I was deeply moved. I thought he was a man of principle, someone who, out of gratitude to my family, wouldn't abandon anyone. A week later, to my shock, the police informed Jiwen that Shinruoming had been taken to the border by her debt collectors. They attempted to assault her, and in a desperate bid to escape, she jumped from the moving vehicle, ultimately perishing in the remote mountains. A multi-departmental search of the area failed to recover her body. Heartbroken, Jiwen led his own search party, but it was all in vain. Returning home, he unleashed all his agony and resentment on me, seizing my throat until I could barely breathe. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't forced my hand with this engagement, I would have gone to save Ruoming. It's her I love. I promised to protect her forever. Why couldn't it have been you, Shinran, who died? You killed my Ruoming." He spent the night berating and beating me. The next day, I was forced to attend the funeral he held for Shinruoming. In front of all the media, he made no effort to hide his grief, yet treated me with utter indifference. The world believed Shinruoming was his one true love, casting me as the villain who tore them apart, a target for public scorn. but no one knew that Ji-Wen's success today was built on the investments my father and I secured for his family's company. No one knew that when he was kidnapped abroad, it was my money and efforts that rescued him, and certainly, no one knew that while he and my father were building their business overseas, I was the one meticulously caring for his ailing mother. When she was hospitalized for surgery, I hired the most renowned specialists and footed the exorbitant medical bills. The public may be ignorant, but how could Ji-Wen forget? But alas, a beast never learns gratitude. His personal mountain search and his tears at the funeral won him a flood of public sympathy. The internet was awash with praise for his profound devotion. Yet that very night, he beat me again. Leaving me battered and bloodied, he smashed my phone, cutting off any chance to call for help, and locked me out on the balcony. Ruoming is dead, she died in your place. What right do you have to live, you cowardly, self-serving wretch? Shinran, just die, locked out there, racked with pain. I had no strength left to fight. Had I known this would be my fate, I would never have begged Ji-Wen to save me. So, in this life, when I saw Ji-Wen again, I didn't rush to him, nor did I mention he was my fiancé. It was Shin Ruoming beside me who played the delicate, pitiful victim, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes, biting her lip as silent tears fell. She glanced at me, and seeing my continued silence, her weeping grew even more heart-wrenchingly beautiful. Ji-Wen immediately stepped in front of Shin Ruoming, shielding her. Ruoming is frail, whatever money you want, I'll pay it. A crowd of onlookers had already gathered outside my house, with small-time live streamers broadcasting the scene. After all, it's not every day you see a wealthy family like the Shins go bankrupt and get hounded by debt collectors. The whispers were flying. Wasn't it the eldest Shin daughter who got engaged to CEO Ji? Why is he trying to save the second daughter instead? What second daughter? Shin Ruoming is just a bastard child. Mrs. Shin was kind enough to take her in, and look at the trouble she's caused for her own flesh and blood. Didn't you hear him just now? CEO Ji called her Ruoming. So intimate. What else does that tell you? This is a fiancé hooking up with his future sister-in-law, a proper family scandal. Ji-Wen turned and pulled Shin Ruoming into his arms, completely ignoring the surrounding gossip. They held each other tightly. The look he gave her was full of tenderness. The cameras of small-time reporters and streamers all focused on them. They dared to be so brazen right in front of his fiancé. My mother was trembling with rage. She stepped forward to confront him. Ji-Wen, the one you're engaged to is Ran. The one who's been taking care of your mother is also Ran. Now our Shin family is being chased for debts. Your future father-in-law is missing. And instead of helping your own fiancé, you're openly having an affair. Have you no conscience? Ji-Wen's company only survived thanks to my father's help. He learned the ropes by following my dad abroad in the early days, but now he shows no concern for my father's disappearance, only thinking of taking Ruoming away. In my past life, I begged him to help me find my father. With the Ji family's resources back then, they might have been more effective than the local police overseas, but I died waiting, with no result, faced with the crowd's murmurs and my mother's accusations. Before Ji-Wen could speak, Shin Ruoming's eyes welled up with tears. She pitifully let go of Ji-Wen. Auntie, I know you look down on me, Wen. You should go help my sister, I'm not worthy. As she spoke, she inched away from him. Ji-Wen grabbed her arm, the last trace of guilt vanishing from his eyes. He shot me a fierce glare. It's my money, I'll save whoever I want, save your moral blackmail. With that, he ignored everyone's attempts to stop him, took Ruoming's hand, and turned to leave. My mother, still fuming, tried to go after them, but I stopped her. Ji-Wen, stop right there. He turned back, thinking I was going to make a scene, his face full of disgust. Shinran, I will help you, but not now, you'd better. I let out a cold laugh, not wanting to hear another second of his hypocrisy. I don't need your help, I just have one question. Since you're engaged to me, why are you messing around with my sister? Ji-Wen's face changed. Out of respect for your mother as an elder, I won't say much, but Shinran, how dare you spout such nonsense? Shin Ruoming chimed in. Sister, I didn't. You know damn well if I'm talking nonsense. Ji-Wen, I didn't wait for his retort, turning my fire directly on Shin Ruoming. Little sister, spare me the innocent act. If you were truly pure and kind, would you be sneaking around with my fiancé behind my back? Your whole green tea performance makes me sick. As soon as my words landed, Shin Ruoming started trembling and crying as if she'd suffered the greatest injustice. Ji-Wen pulled her into a protective embrace, glaring daggers at me. Shinran, I'm the one who wants to save Ruoming. There's no need for your veiled attacks here. I always thought you were a reasonable person, but it seems I was wrong about you. That phrase, I was wrong about you, didn't just dismiss my efforts over the years. It dismissed me. A tidal wave of hatred made my chest heave. I forced down the disgust. Since you despise me so much, let's call off the engagement right here, in front of all these reporters, and you can pay back every cent I spent on you during our engagement. You want to break off the engagement? Jiwon clearly hadn't expected this. That's right, I said firmly, not only am I breaking it off, but I want you to repay every single expense I covered for you during our engagement. From the petty costs of your food, clothes, and living expenses, to the major ones like your mother's surgery and medical bills, and even the Shin family's investment in your company, you'll pay back every last penny. I've done a rough calculation. It comes to about 2 or 3 million. It might not cover the full debt, but it'll do for interest. Jiwon flushed crimson, veins bulging on his forehead. Shinran, don't you dare go too far, go too far. I laughed dismissively. In my past life, because you saved me, I could let these material things slide, but for Shinruoming, you beat me, humiliated me, and even watched me die. I may not have the power to take full revenge for that grudge yet, but I'll be damned if I let a scumbag like you keep a single penny of my money. Shinruoming immediately chimed in, playing the victim who strikes first. Sister, what's given is given, how can you ask for it back? Besides, you know perfectly well Alwen is already stretched thin just trying to save me. Are you trying to drive him to ruin? Since our marriage is hopeless, the law is on my side to reclaim these funds. Go ask a lawyer if you don't believe me. I stared coldly at Shinruoming. You went to university, for heaven's sake. Even if you don't know the law, you should have basic morals, right? What's wrong with me wanting my own money back? In fact, isn't this better for you, once the money is repaid? There will be no engagement and no financial ties between Ji Wen and me. You can marry him smoothly and settle in comfortably as the wealthy Mrs. Ji. Of course, if President Ji is unwilling to repay. I shot them a cold sidelong glance and addressed the crowd. Then I implore everyone here to help me spread the word about this gold-digging President Ji's conduct. Let his business partners see what kind of man he really is. The moment I finished speaking, laughter rippled through the crowd. Even the menacing debt collectors weren't in a hurry to press their claims anymore, settling in to watch the drama unfold. A flicker of calculation passed through Shinruoming's eyes, yet her face remained meek and submissive as she looked at Ji Wen. Ji Wen's glare at me grew even more disgusted. I'd probably offended his fragile ego by insulting and threatening him in public. Your father is already on the debtor blacklist, he said, even if I paid up now. How do I know you wouldn't just take the money and run? Unable to win the argument on merit, he resorted to slinging mud. My father is missing, not a deadbeat. I shot back immediately. Everyone here knows my father was the founder of a leading tech company. For years, the Shin Group has been committed to philanthropy. The good they've done for society is plain for all to see. Then, I announced loudly, I've decided to sell the Shin Group's latest technological patents at a low price. Hoping to get through this crisis, at these words, the crowd erupted. A starved camel is still bigger than a horse. Even though no one knew the exact nature of the technology one mentioned, the Shin Group's past achievements in the tech field were too dazzling. No one could resist such a temptation. Wang's Tech just entered the live stream. They're asking for a quote. CEO Liu is here too. They're sending people over right away. In my past life, I guarded my father's life's work, his technological legacy, and handed it over to Ji Wen without reservation. But after he got the core technology and heard of Shinruoming's death, he showed me no mercy. I gave him everything the Shin family had, and in return, I got nothing but torment and abuse. In this life, I'm fighting for myself, for my family, for my parents. If I remember correctly, at this very moment in my past life, sitting in a black luxury car not far from us was the Shin Group's longtime rival, Liang Bian. The head of the Liang Corporation. Liang Bian was about Ji Wen's age, but he was a self-made man with a ruthless reputation. His background was mysterious. No one knew who his powerful financial backer was. He was no paper tiger like Ji Wen. He definitely had the substantial funds to acquire the Shin Group's patent technology. In my past life, he had even sent people to sound me out about selling the tech. Back then, I was convinced Ji Wen would save the Shin family. So I dismissed them as opportunists and sent them packing. Now, he was my last lifeline. Just yesterday, I righteously sent his men packing, and today I'm publicly auctioning off the technology. I can only imagine what Liang Bian must think of me now, but I'm backed into a corner with no way out. In my past life, Ji Wen chose me, reaping both the profits of the core technology and the reputation of a savior in my hour of need, thriving in the business world. In this life, I'm going to strip him of both fame and fortune. Shinran, this was your father's life's work. How can you bear to hand it over to outsiders? Ji Wen, probably sensing my resolve was ironclad, actually softened his tone. I know you're angry I saved Shinruoming first, but rest assured, I will also break off the engagement, return the money. I cut him off directly. Upon hearing this, Ji-wen's face twisted with rage, and he threatened me, enunciating each word slowly. Shinran, don't forget. The debt collectors plan to take you to the border. You know exactly how chaotic it is out there. I hadn't forgotten the pain he inflicted on me in my past life. I swung my arm wide and slapped him several times in quick succession. Staggering him, my eyes bloodshot, I screamed, "You bastard, what right do you have to call that my father's life's work? When your G family went bankrupt, have you forgotten who helped you make a comeback? Now that my father is missing, you've sent no one to look for him, you refused to lend us money to pay the debt, and here you are threatening my safety. You're a monster." My words painted Ji-wen as the perfect picture of a heartless scoundrel. A regular chin shimmy. Even the lead debt collector looked at him with utter contempt. "How dare you hit me?" Ji-wen instinctively raised his hand to strike back. Just then, a loud voice rang out from the back of the crowd. "The police are here." Quickly, the crowd parted to make way as two police officers approached us. Ji-wen immediately lowered his hand, and the debt collectors meekly stepped aside. What's going on here with such a big crowd, causing a public disturbance? The senior officer at the front looked at us sternly. "Misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. We were just discussing the repayment." The debt collector produced a contract from his hand. It clearly states the borrower and the repayment date right here. This is a legitimate lending agreement. Their family defaulted on the debt past the contract date. We are law-abiding citizens. Everything we've done is reasonable and legal. The police officer examined the contract several times, confirming it was a standard high-interest loan, then turned to Ji-wen. "And who are you?" Ji-wen immediately replied, "I'm the debtor's son-in-law, Shinran's fiancé. I'm here to help repay the debt, but my funds are insufficient. I can only save one person." The contract stipulated that if the debtor was unable to repay, the debtor and their family members would be required to repay through labor. "Officer, he is not my fiancé." I straightened my posture, although Ji-wen and I were engaged. "He is now having an affair with my sister. Our engagement is null and void. He should return all the money spent during our engagement period, but he is now refusing to repay. I hope you can help me recover my personal assets." The officer looked at Ji-wen, who hastily denied it. "We just had an argument. Everything she's saying is just angry talk." The onlookers who witnessed the whole scene weren't about to play along with his act. They started shouting, "He's lying, officer. Make him pay up, pay back the money, you cheater, pay up, you freeloader." The police officer quickly tried to restore order. "Quiet, everyone, settle down." He then said, "Since this is a private matter between you, we won't intervene, but you can't have such a large crowd gathered here. It affects public order and safety. Everyone, please disperse." However, how could the crowd let go of such a dramatic spectacle? Especially the small-time streamers, whose live streams usually only had a few hundred viewers. Today, each of their channels was flooded with hundreds of thousands. The crowd refused to leave, forcing the police to stay and prevent any potential clashes. The scene reached a stalemate. At that moment, Liang Bian, who had been silently watching the drama unfold from a distance, finally made his appearance. His assistant cleared a path through the crowd for him, and he walked straight up to me. "Miss Shin, regarding your earlier statement about selling the Shin Group's core technology, does that offer still stand?" "Of course it does," I responded immediately, "but I won't accept any opportunistic lowballing. The minimum must be enough for me to clear my debts." "Rest assured," Liang Bian said briskly, "our Liang Group has always held Mr. Shin in high regard. We would never engage in such practices." Seeing this, Ji-wen immediately stepped in front of Liang Bian. "Mr. Liang, what are you doing here? You can't do this. Only Uncle Shin has the authority to sell Shin Group's core technology." I had anticipated he'd say that. Without hesitation, I produced the technology transfer certificate my father had given me before his disappearance. "Do I have the authority now?" If the police hadn't been present, I would have loved to shove that document right in his face. Ji-wen snatched the certificate and leafed through it page by page, his face a mask of disbelief. "How is this possible? This can't be." Liang Bian was surprisingly straightforward. He took out a checkbook, wrote out the exact amount of my debt, and handed it to the lead debt collector. However, the sum was only enough to secure my release, not my mother's. I looked at my mother with worry, about to beg Liang Bian to help her too, but she shook her head slightly. "All right," the officer said, turning his attention to Ji-wen. "Now that part of the debt is settled, what about this engagement issue of yours?" Ji-wen glared at Liang Bian and me with sheer resentment, gritting his teeth as he declared, "I'm not calling off the engagement." I knew exactly what he was scheming. With the Shin family in crisis, backing out now would make him look like a fair-weather friend, inviting gossip. and after I'd publicly demanded money from him. Breaking off the engagement without paying would paint him as a heartless ingrate, a reputation he couldn't stomach. Plus, I dared to hit him earlier. He was undoubtedly plotting how to make me pay for that after we were married. Seeing his stubborn resolve, a deeper chill settled in my heart. Jiwon was selfish, disloyal, and coldly calculating, weighing every decision for his own gain. He expected me to smile and accept a raw deal. The man was utterly heartless. My eyes welling up, I addressed the police and the onlookers. Everyone here today. I'm not asking Jiwon to settle my family's debts. I'm only asking him to repay the money I spent on him after our engagement. I won't even claim what I don't have receipts for. Just return the 2 million for my mother's medical bills. What, 2 million? You've got some nerve, Shin Ruoming blurted out, her voice rising sharply. Her outburst immediately drew disapproving glares from the police and the crowd. Idiot, I cursed silently in my mind. Do you have any idea what's been keeping old Mrs. G alive all these years? I raised my voice. It's the best hospitals in the country, the top specialists, and the most expensive medicine from home and abroad. I've footed every single bill, year after year, day after day, for 3 whole years, and you still think I'm asking for too much. I shot a scornful glance at Jiwon, who was still in shock, and this freeloader has cost me far more than just that. 2 years ago, he was kidnapped by a gang overseas. The ransom was 3 million, I paid double that to hire mercenaries to get him out. I was even worried the local mob wouldn't let him be, so I bribed the local kingpin with dozens of gold bars to guarantee his safety there. Tell me, isn't all that worth 3 million? 3 million, that's not nearly enough, the officer said, looking at me with a complicated expression. Silly girl, should I get you a basket? I was confused. He continued, for digging wild vegetables, you've got a natural talent for it, even more devoted than Wang Baochuan. I knew he was referring to my past foolishness in love. Liang Bian chimed in at the right moment. If Mr. G disputes the amount, I can have a lawyer help Miss Shin calculate the total sum. We'll ensure Mr. G isn't taken advantage of. Although reluctant, with the crowd's growing outrage, Jiwon had no choice but to agree to repay the money. The look he gave me, however, was like a poisoned arrow, wishing it could pierce right through my heart. He probably never dreamed that someone like me, on the verge of being hauled off by debt collectors for hard labor, could cause such damage to his company and reputation. In the end, Jiwon left with Shen Ruoming, under a barrage of insults and pointed fingers from the onlookers, with Liang Bian and his bodyguards present. The debt collector boss didn't dare step forward to hurry me along. I hadn't noticed my mother walk up to Liang Bian and bow deeply. Mr. Liang, I can see you're a kind man. Please, I beg you, help our Shin family. My husband is absolutely not the type to run away from his debts. Mom, seeing the white hairs on her head as she bowed, the tears I'd been holding back finally fell. I too bowed to Liang Bian. Mr. Liang, I know we're being shamelessly forward, but you're our only hope right now. I need to clear my father's name. He has always been law-abiding and would never abandon us and flee. Please, can you help us find him overseas, even if it's just a body? My mother and I will accept it. In my past life, my father went abroad with Jiwon to inspect a factory, only to get caught in a riot. After a single phone call to reassure us he was safe, he vanished without a trace. Jiwon returned alone, claiming they had been separated. Shortly after, the Shin Group's stock market crashed overnight, leading to bankruptcy, and creditors came knocking from all directions. From the collapse of the company to my family being taken by debt collectors, and finally to my own death at Jiwon's hands, it all happened within 2 months. The details had blurred in the haze of fear, but now, thinking back calmly, I feel I've overlooked something crucial. I have to stay. Only by staying alive in the capital can I uncover the truth. Mr. Liang, I know you're only interested in acquiring the Shin Group's technology, I said, my voice choked with sobs. Please forgive my shamelessness. But if you can't help me find my father, I'll have no choice but to raise the price for the technology. Liang Bian helped my mother and me to our feet. My eyes were so full of tears I couldn't make out his expression. Clinging to a sliver of hope, I pleaded with this mysterious Mr. Liang, hoping he would lend a hand. Mr. Liang, I beg you. A heavy silence fell over the room. Even the reporters and streamers went quiet. After what felt like an eternity, a sigh broke the stillness. I understand, Liang Bian said, looking at me. Mr. Shen is a respected senior of mine, and his disappearance is deeply suspicious. As a junior, it's only right that I offer my assistance. I will mobilize all my overseas resources to conduct a full-scale search and rescue for Mr. Shen. Upon hearing this, my mother was so overcome with emotion she tried to kneel before him. I quickly caught and steadied her. I had finally managed to stay. On the very day I was supposed to be taken away by debt collectors in my past life, I chose to remain in the capital. This time, I wouldn't have to rely on Ji-wen, nor would I have to wait on others' hand and foot every day, enduring humiliation, abuse, and ultimately a fatal beating. The house and cars had already been seized by the court to settle debts. I handed over all my jewelry to the debt collectors, hoping they would leave my mother and me alone and stop harassing us. To my surprise, those debt collector guys turned out to be surprisingly decent. They actually returned my jewelry. "Miss Shen, you've got us all wrong," they said. "We're legitimate debt collectors. We don't do shady stuff." I was genuinely taken aback. If they had been this considerate in my past life, why would Shen Ruoming have chosen to jump from a moving car to escape? Who was lying? I didn't want to rely on Liang Bian, so I turned down the hotel he arranged and found a cheap youth hostel to settle my mother in. Before nightfall, I slipped back into my family's villa through the back door that had always been locked. Seeing the familiar garden, every blade of grass and every tree, I finally broke down and sobbed uncontrollably, but I never imagined Ji-wen could be so despicable. That night, I groggily opened my eyes just in time to see Ji-wen holding a fruit knife poised above my throat. He wanted to kill me. In my past life, after Shen Ruoming's death, Ji-wen's temper had grown increasingly violent, and he would hit me from time to time. That's why I'd become a light sleeper, always waking at the slightest sense of someone nearby. Now, dressed in black, he glared at me with pure malice. "Awake, I have to admit, I underestimated you. I never thought you'd manage to stay in the capital without my help." I sat up in bed, fully dressed, and stared at him impassively. "So this is the real you, Ji-wen, a pathetic coward who only stabs people in the back." "Shut your mouth," he snarled, clamping a hand over my lips and dragging me to the floor. "If you had just gone quietly with the debt collectors and waited for me to rescue you, we wouldn't be here. I'll admit, I felt a shred of pity for you. You took care of my mother, and we were engaged, but then you humiliated me in public, calling off the wedding and demanding money. You made a complete fool out of me." His rage built, his eyes glinting with venom. "With you gone, my past stays buried. Then I can marry Shen Ruoming with a clean slate." I secretly pinched the flesh of my thigh, and tears sprang to my eyes instantly. "Ji-wen," I choked out, "we grew up together. My father was your teacher. And for Shen Ruoming, you'd kill me." A woman's tears are her most potent weapon. I wept pitifully, gasping for breath as I slumped against him. In that moment of his stunned hesitation, my wrist flicked. Without a second thought, I wrenched the fruit knife from his grasp and drove it into his chest. "Ah, you bitch, you ambushed me." Ji-wen swung a backhand at me. I rolled away with the momentum, not a trace of tears left on my face. "Ji-wen, if I were you, I wouldn't make a move right now," I said coldly. "After all, if this knife were to pierce your heart, how long do you think you'd last? If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have held back just now." I had controlled the angle and force of the fruit knife with precision. Ji-wen wouldn't die, but it was enough to render him helpless. Lying on the ground, Ji-wen clutched his chest tightly, not daring to move. "If we're talking about being despicable, I'm no match for you," I said, looking at him. "You could stand by and watch your own teacher be framed without lifting a finger. Either you're naturally cold-blooded, or you have another agenda. Ji-wen, which one is it?" Ji-wen's pupils contracted sharply, a flicker of panic crossing his face before it vanished. He scrambled to his feet and fled in a disheveled state. I stood quietly in the darkness, biting my lip hard, letting the taste of blood spread in my mouth. My suspicion was right. Ji-wen was indeed connected to my father's disappearance. Ever since my rebirth, I'd been replaying the events of my past life. In my previous life, after Ji-wen saved me, I instinctively leaned on him as my support. I took care of his sick mother, helped him manage his company, and even tasked him with secretly investigating the truth behind my father's framing and the mastermind behind it. Yet, right up until my death, Ji-wen never uncovered a single lead. Instead, during those 2 months, his fortunes turned, and he became the new darling of the capital, someone everyone curried favor with. Later, when I was locked on the balcony, I overheard him on a phone call mentioning, "Li Luo is very grateful and has provided more funding." Thinking about it now, Li Luo has always been the Shin Group's biggest competitor, notorious in the industry for being ruthless. How could Ji-wen have any connection with him? It was all premeditated from the start. I was just too naive back then. The next day, I went to the Liang Group, Liang Bian, and I talked in his office for nearly 2 hours. When I left his company, my eyes were red. "I'm helping you not just for the Shin family's core technology, but also because I regret the waste of your talent," Liang Bian said to me. "If you hadn't withdrawn from the Shin Group's management after your engagement to Ji-wen, the Shin family wouldn't be in such a dire state now." Your family invited the wolf into the house. I hope you can pull yourself together. If you're willing, the Liang group welcomes you." He said a lot that moved me deeply, and I couldn't hold back my tears. I remembered how I once wanted to help my father grow the company, how I was once the heir he was grooming, but I was blinded by Jiwen, thinking I could rely on him, and ended up in hell. I composed myself and returned to the hostel, only to run into Shin Ruoming at the intersection. Despite her lavish attire today, the dark bruises under her eyes were painfully obvious. "Sister, I finally found you." Shin Ruoming rushed up to me. "Jiwen is injured and hospitalized, still unconscious. Old Mrs. G's condition has worsened too. She's incredibly stubborn and refuses any nursing care. I went to beg that retired senior doctor, but he won't even see me. He was my father's close friend for years. After the news of how Jiwen bullied you that day spread, why would he ever agree to treat them? What does any of that have to do with me?" I cut her off. "Can't handle even one night of this. Wait until you marry Jiwen. Days like this will be endless." I turned to leave, but she blocked my path. "Sister, my own health isn't good either. I simply can't care for two patients. Please, for the sake of our past, save Jiwen." I found it laughable. I can't save him. "But there is one person who can." "Who?" Shin Ruoming asked urgently. "Li Luo," I said, looking at her. "Jiwen is too proud to go to Li Luo for this kind of help, but you could." Shin Ruoming's eyes lit up, then clouded with hesitation. "Isn't Li Luo a rival of the Shin family? He is certainly powerful, but wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to approach him?" "So what? The fact that Jiwen has broken with the Shin family is common knowledge by now," I said with a cold laugh. "I've heard Li Luo's net worth far exceeds Jiwen's. With his help, what kind of doctor couldn't you find? But if you go barging in, he definitely won't see you." "But what?" Shin Ruoming pressed eagerly. I smiled and said, "But Jiwen and Li Luo are good friends. If you go to see him as Jiwen's fiancé, Li Luo will certainly grant you an audience." With that, I turned and walked away. I knew Shin Ruoming all too well, proud and arrogant, relying on her beauty. She considered Jiwen far from her best option. If she encountered a man with better status, position, and looks, she wouldn't hesitate to drop Jiwen in a heartbeat. All I needed to do was have someone keep watch outside Li Luo's company, waiting for her to walk right into the trap. 2 days later, I saw Liang Bian again. This time, he was accompanied by a police officer specializing in overseas missing persons cases. They informed me that Li Luo was a prime suspect in my father's disappearance. Just yesterday, the police had discreetly launched a full investigation, and both Li Luo's operations and the hospital where Jiwen worked were now under surveillance. If Jiwen really did frame Mr. Shin to monopolize the Shin Group's technology, the law will see that justice is served for your family. I bowed in gratitude, my heart pleading for this ordeal to be over soon. Another 3 days passed, and I heard that outside Li Luo's company, the police had apprehended a suspicious-looking woman. Upon interrogation and search, they shockingly found a secret contract detailing financial dealings between Jiwen and Li Luo on her person. The truth was getting closer. A month passed in an atmosphere thick with impending storm. During that month, I spent my time testing the Shin family's former technological assets in the Liang Group's laboratory while staying in touch with Liang Bian. Then, one afternoon, I received a call from the police. At the station, I finally saw my father, his face etched with exhaustion, and learned the whole story. It turned out that during the time my father was missing, he had been kidnapped by mobsters hired by Li Luo. They forced him to reveal his bank vault passwords, severed the company's funding, maliciously saddled him with loan shark debts, and ultimately brought down the Shin Group. My father had been set up by their alliance precisely because he had discovered Jiwen's illegal activities. Fortunately, my father had been cautious and managed to escape back from overseas. In the end, Jiwen and Li Luo were arrested by the police for kidnapping, malicious competition, and illegal fundraising. The relevant authorities also uncovered their illicit funds and tax evasion. Jiwen's misdeeds were quickly exposed by the media, utterly destroying his reputation. Our family life finally got back on track. I officially started my job at Liang Corporation, spending my days immersed in research in the lab. My father, full of energy, also started his company anew. I hadn't thought about Jiwen and Shin Ruoming for a long time, until Liang Bian came to see me with news. Shin Ruoming had been beaten to death by Jiwen in the hospital. I heard that while Jiwen was beating her, he kept shouting wrong, saying this isn't how things were supposed to be. I should be the CEO, not a criminal. He even yelled, if Shin Ruoming hadn't blown me up in my past life, I wouldn't have done these things I'll regret forever. Jiwen begged the police to see me, but I refused. Later, I heard he committed suicide in prison, but I don't care about any of that anymore. I just want to live with dignity. together with my family. That's all for today's story. If you've listened this far, please leave a comment saying have a great day every day. We at Wake wish you happiness each and every day.